Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to the 4th episode of the Untold Journey podcast series with me, Nyaboth Pascal Alfred. Today, in this podcast series, we are joined by the formidable Elizabeth Chiziga, Zimba from Uganda. Elizabeth Chiziga is the regional representative for Africa, as well as a global focal point for the ACT Alliance Peace and Human Security Program. And today, Miss Elizabeth is going to take us through her personal journey, the things that she's done in her life and where she is right now in her career. And I'm so excited that we're going to dive into her journey because this is an amazing woman who has done a lot for the Horn of Africa, for Greater Lakes region. And Miss Elizabeth, we are so honored to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, we're so humbled to have you today, and thank you for accepting to be here.
I too am humbled.
Yes. If someone asks, who is Elizabeth Chiziga, and what will you tell that person?
Elizabeth Chiziga is currently, as you have said, I am the ACT Alliance regional representative for Africa. Mm-hmm. With our secretariat in Nairobi, Kenya. We are just your neighbors there at AACC. Right. And I've done this role since the early 2019. And before that, I was the executive director of the Fellowship of Christian Councils and Churches in the Great Lakes and in the Horn of Africa, Kisiigha. I'm sure you know that fellowship as a sister organization to AACC. Yes. I was at the helm of leadership as the executive director for 7 years. And just to remind you that peace building and conflict transformation is the key program for the fellowship. And before that, I was the deputy executive secretary for programs at the Uganda Joint Christian Council. And again, even there in the UJCC, peace was one of our key programs. And I did that in the council in Uganda for 9 years before moving on to Kisiigha. Before that, I was more, I immediately after my undergraduate, I was more in microfinance. But gradually I moved into peace building work.
Thank you. And this brings me to the next question. You know, before anyone does anything, there's always a story of someone right from where they come from. And you just say that from microfinance, you moved to peace building. What informed your decision? What is your story? We want to know.
That is, yes. And I'm born from a village in Kisiigha district in Uganda. And I grew up in the 70s and in the 80s in Uganda. And Uganda was very, very insecure. I remember as a small girl, we used to every evening, you get some variables with you and you go and stay in the bushes. Why? Because in the night, there were high chances of attacking people. Robbers, killers, there used to be even rumors that the list of those to be attacked is out, and so is on the list. So I grew up in that environment, and I remember very well that the most valuable item that my father carried was a radio. Those days we used to call it radiogram. It was so valuable to him that he carried it with him in the bushes. So those were not very good days. In the early 80s, when we used to go to school, we used to be tortured. I remember being in a school and we were all in a boarding school in Tororo, and we were all moved to the laboratories to hide. We left our dormitories to go to different areas to these guys, and we used to hide ourselves there. If alone the torture in the buses from Kisiigha to Tororo, there was a lot of torture. And just to end my story is that in 1986, I remember it was January, my father was gunned down He was coming back home to his home, and he was gunned down. And I kept asking, where did this gun come from? But I felt that the environment, the proliferation of small arms during that time, and even up to today, is so high that there are high chances of many of us being killed by these small arms and light weapons.
Right. Wow. Yeah. That's a long way to go, and I see where the passion comes from, and clearly you've been standing your ground on peace building, and this is for a reason. That's why it's very important to always understand what are the stories that informs why someone does the things that they do. And if from all your engagements, right from the 80s to the 90s and the early 20s up to date, you have notably been involved in different levels of peace processes. And kindly just take us through some of the peace processes that you've been involved in, especially in the Great Lakes region, because these are some of the things that you've been highly involved in. Take us through some of these processes.
Okay. I think I will begin with this process in Burundi, where we started. Of course, peace, you cannot go it alone. I remember we made a solidarity visit to Burundi. You remember very well, in 2015, 2016, Burundi was on fire, and that was caused by the presidential third term. So together with the World Council of Churches, together with the AACC, together with other ecumenical organizations, we organized a solidarity visit. And I remember well, led by the former GS of WCC, we went in and met various stakeholders, including the then president, may his soul rest in eternal peace. We met leaders of the ruling party. We met women groups, youth groups, commissions that were related to peace building work. We met quite a good number. We met former presidents of Burundi, and there are quite a number of them, because the story for Burundi, for any president, is not good. The assassinations, the killings. So we interacted with many stakeholders, leader of parliament, the speaker of parliament. And when we came back, I sat with Dr. Agnes, and we looked at the report and started developing activities, so that the solidarity visit in itself is not sufficient, but what happens thereafter is what is. How can we pick actions, interventions from this visit? So we developed a document that was more action-oriented. I did that with Dr. Agnes, and we sent it back to the council in Burundi, SNEB, because it would be like the leader of ecumenical and churches in Burundi. And this document helped the church leaders under SNEB to come up with an action plan for peace. And of course, there was a lesson there, because by then, South Sudan Council of Churches had already moved into APP. So Burundi also was able to use that document to develop the action plan for peace. I think, let me just say that sometimes the limitations are on follow-up. On follow-up. And I think we sometimes, get excited with some milestones and we forget to take it further. Number two, I'm proud of the mobilization and the empowerment of women, faith women in the Great Lakes and the Horn of Africa, the capacity building that we undertook. The journey started in 2017 in Kigali. and we moved on to Addis Ababa. We moved on to Nairobi. We went back to Addis Ababa. So we mobilized women, 5 women in the Great Lakes and Horn of Africa. And we launched what we call the Regional Faith Women Mediation Network.
Impressive.
Which is still there. At my leadership at Kisiigha, I feel this is a worthwhile investment. This is a worthwhile intervention. And of course, this was informed by lack of or limited participation of women in peace processes. And there was a study, and this led us to enhance the capacity. We also know that in some instances, a woman is put on a peace mission, a peace team, and we are sometimes called flower girls because we are just there to escort. How can we be effective? So we needed this empowerment of women, and I'm very proud of that. Number 2 is the mobilization of the youth. So we also mobilized the youth in this region. We enhanced their capacities, and they are able also to have their regional youth peace ambassadors network. And they are doing a lot in their respective councils, in their respective churches, in their respective countries. I just want to give an example of a youth in the DRC. I may not mention her name,
No problem.
but she goes on the radio, she mobilizes young people, and younger people hand in guns. The handing in guns has also happened in Nairobi slums when we were working with the National Councils of Churches of Kenya, NCCK. So youth are very, very instrumental. And I just want to say that the youth have right. The youth will not need fuel for the vehicle. The youth will not need a lot of resources for them to act. The youth will act out of their passion.
Right.
I remember the youth in the Mukulu slums. They even came up with what they call a client charter, so that they mobilize the communities and ensure that the communities sign that they are committed to peace in their communities. Quite a lot, and very interesting stories of the youth and of the women who are still working hard. Our empowerment of the women was also recognizing that there are community initiatives where women are participating, but this go unnoticed. And we know that we have community conflicts in our communities, and the women are there working. But who recognizes? We are only talking about track 1, track 2. But what about these tracks in the communities? How can we uplift those women and bring them, if need be, to track 1, track 2? But also, how can we recognize their efforts? So we also came up with magazines. We also came up with storytelling by these women. We were also deliberate to mentor them. So we could even have a one-to-one conversation with the young women so that we bridge the generational gap of women in peace building.
True. Wow, very impressive, very impressive. And something that stood out for me was the part where you said women, when they're involved in different peace processes and all these missions, sometimes it looks like they are flower girls in the process. Why do you think that is happening? Is it it's a very strange thing, because women are part of the society, like you said, and they have a huge contribution to make in the society. But then when levels of decision making are reached, it's always that women are taken away, or they are set apart, or when they're there, it's just for the sake of ticking a box that, oh, by the way, we had also women in our mission, in our group. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, we realized that these women were not empowered. They did not know, yes, I'm there, and how do I articulate? Did they have the skills in mediation? Did they have the skills in peace building? So the issue of skilling, then another issue is exposure. So I remember we organized meetings at the African Union, and it took women there to interact. We also, so that was the Peace and Security Commission of the AU. We took women to Addis Ababa. We also mobilized women to be part of FemWise. FemWise is that network of women peace builders under the AU. So as we speak now, I am a member of FemWise. As we speak now, many women in this regional faith network belong to FemWise. And by interacting with other women in these processes, they get empowered. It's a bit of mentoring, it's a bit of exposure. But number two is also to look at the men's side. Have the men accepted and created space? If the woman is part of the mission, can the woman also, because when you go for the mediation missions, peace missions, it is planned. It is planned who will say what? You don't just go there and talk. So in that planning, where is the space for this woman to also lead into the discussion, to also input? So there must be deliberate efforts by the men who are still at the helm, who are still at the leadership, so that in the planning, in the sharing of responsibilities in this peace mission, it is deliberate that I, a woman, am also given a role. And also that role, we should now also, it meant bringing the men on board to appreciate that, yes, we have something to offer. And we can lead in certain areas during a mediation and peace talks.
Right. No, I agree with you that there has to be a conjoint effort between the men and women to first and foremost realize that everyone's contribution in the society matters, and especially the fact that everyone is affected by the conflict, you know. And throughout your journey, what at individual level, what are some of the challenges that you encountered? I know you've talked a few minutes ago about all the challenges that comes as women and etc. But as an individual, what did you encounter through your journey until today?
During these processes, okay. I will,
no, it could be during the processes or
Pasca.
Yes.
Really, and I want to speak from experience.
Sure, please.
That sometimes our efforts become difficult to meet the key peace guarantors, duty bearers, protagonists. The reason may not be known. So these guys, in most cases, are very, very elusive. So the question is, how strategic can we be? Who are our allies? I will not mention, but one time we organized with the church leaders from South Sudan, and we wanted to meet one of the presidents. And we were very excited that this was going to take place. We all traveled to that country, and somehow the president could not meet us. And we know our African countries, you just needed to talk to the right target. So we met another government official who told us, I will pass on your message. And my dear sister, follow-up becomes a challenge if you have not met the right targets. That is one of the challenges. I think also we know that there is also conflict of interest from neighboring countries. There are also vested interests that that limit your level of engagement. And also due to the region being highly conflicted and highly poverty stricken, this means that religious leaders, church leaders also have their own challenges in their own countries with their own governments. and with their own constituencies. So mobilizing them to act for another neighboring country, I still feel that they are not committed to so much be in it because the challenges back home are enormous. And we saw this becoming a bit difficult, much as biblically, we are one body, many parts. For me as an individual, these are some of the things that I saw limiting our engagement. And I want to say that as a woman, I never faced any challenge. Instead, the religious leaders were always happy to have a woman amongst themselves. Yeah, so I would think that those are some of the challenges. They are individual, at individual level. I do not think I have many challenges doing this work.
Right. Wow. Now that's very impressive to hear, and it's good that you've managed to find your way out on how to infiltrate and also put your voice very strong out there. When you talked about having the fact that there are some regional institutions or regional or neighboring countries that could be having interest in a specific maybe context or a specific conflicts, how did you overcome that? Because work has to move on at the end of the day. What are some of the overcoming mechanisms or that you guys used?
I would think that in order for us to engage the interest, we just have to continue with the dialogue. We just have to continue to seek the space. But as we dialogue, we need evidence-based peace advocacy. We need evidence-based. There was a team that went to meet a particular president. And when they were putting up their points and challenges, the president said, no, that is not very true. Those are just allegations. So we need to have the information. We need to have the information from the ground with the numbers so that we are also not challenged, in the form of allegations. So that evidence-based. If people are dying, let the fighting people know that so many have died, so many have been displaced. Even if they may continue to be in denial, we must continue with the dialogue. We must continue engaging them, talking to them, and showing them exactly, because some of them are not on the ground killing the people, but they are giving instructions. But let them know the impact of what is happening, the impact of fighting, the impact of violence. So the evidence-based and continued dialogue is very, very important.
Sure. Thank you. That's very powerful.
I think also the other challenge would be the impartiality. Right. Let me call it political impartiality, but also impartiality in the conflicts. The religious leaders, if we are to stay on course, we must be able to avoid. I will not name countries, but we have seen the church leaders burning their hands, burning their feet, because they have been involved in these processes. And if you have been involved, then how do you intervene? And as a religious leader, as a church leader, you are for everybody. Yours is to serve, yours is to minister, yours is to speak peace. But if you have been seen supporting a particular candidate, supporting a particular fighting group, then you have burnt your hands, you have burnt your mouth, you have burnt your face. You cannot mediate. You cannot intervene objectively.
Oh, that's powerful. That's powerful addition right there. Thank you so much. And let's take 2 steps backward. Let's go back to the 80s a little bit. When that moment when you saw your father was gunned down, and which informed your entire career and informed the reason why you joined peace building, because you want a peaceful society and all that. Are you proud of that decision that you made in the 80s, or that moment that you saw your father was killed because of a gun violence?
And surely, for me, education has been my passion.
Right.
Education has been my passion to pursue, and nobody would stop me. When my father was gunned down, I was a candidate.
Sorry. Yeah, please.
When my father was gunned down, I was a candidate in Form 4. And people thought I would not achieve. You know, of course, everyone thinks, oh, this has affected you so much. Of course, I thank my bigger brother that was able to pick me up and paid the school fees until I went to Makerere on a government sponsorship. So, but I said this has happened, but I value education, and I know that for my life to move a bit from the village, I need this education. So I continued and I did well, and I want to thank God. Of course, it's not by might, not by power, but by the Spirit of God. So I'm very passionate about education, and actually, I have some needed girls that I support so that they can also be able to manage life the way I have managed life, the way I have been exposed, and all of that. I know that if it wasn't my education, possibly, Pascal, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so passionate about girl education. Yeah, and so when I got into the peace work, and luckily enough, when I joined UJCC, when I joined Kisiigha, in the peace building, we had a program that addresses small arms and light weapons. And I also felt passionate that because the gun took my father, that advocacy, I cannot leave it to other people. So those were very good opportunities. 9 years in UJCC, 7 years in Kisiigha. We were advocating against proliferation of small arms and light weapons. And my dear Pascal, we cannot talk about peace building without addressing issues of the guns, issues of Salwa, small arms and light weapons. We do have the Nairobi Protocol on small arms and light weapons. It covers all these countries, Horn of Africa, Great Lakes. We do have that Nairobi Protocol. We should use it to advocate. And all the countries are signatories. South Sudan, Sudan, Ethiopia, all of these are signatories. How can we use that instrument? A lot is happening, and when I was at Kisiigha, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Regional Center on Small Arms and Light Weapons, which is mandated to follow up the implementation of the Nairobi Protocol. We were part of the processes of the Arms Trade Treaty that came into force on December 2014, because they had reached 50 countries that had signed, ratified the Arms Trade Treaty. Unfortunately, I've not checked on the internet. Our countries from Southern Africa, from Eastern Africa, they were not willing to ratify and to sign and to be a party to the Arms Trade Treaty. ECOWAS has done well. ECOWAS countries are signatories. So those are some of the engagements that we need to deepen, because with the presence of proliferation of small arms and light weapons, peace will be elusive. Peace will not be sustainable. I want also to add the issue of governance. We cannot talk about sustainable peace without linking to governance processes in our countries. These have to be linked. We have to connect them. We have to be deliberate. We have to integrate. We have to do holistic programming and not silos in our programs.
Wow, that's very powerful, Elizabeth. You have no idea. I'm looking at this woman that has done a lot and come through your journey until today, and I see why the fire is burning so much, and we truly appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your journey. How would you want to be remembered? What legacy do you want to be remembered for?
I believe that the name Elizabeth Chiziga Zimba is a household name in peace building in the Great Lakes and in the Horn of Africa. And I want to believe that if my name was not a household name, AACC wouldn't have invited me to be part of this conversation, to share my journey, to share my story. But specifically, I am proud of the Regional Faith Women Mediation Network. I am proud of the Regional Youth Ambassadors Network.
Nice. Wow, that's very powerful. Thank you so much. I know if we start going deeper into decoding every process that you've gone through, I'm sure we need a whole week to discuss this. Yeah, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking us through your entire journey. Do you have any last words for us before we close today?
I don't know whether I have shared about the challenge of deepening our engagements, but focusing on root causes.
Right.
I think after this evidence-based, after this conflict analysis, conflict mapping, and all of that, I think it's not easy. It is a hardcore, what I would call hardcore peace advocacy, but possibly we may need to get back to addressing the root causes of conflicts. And consistently, and mark the word, consistently engaging the right targets, the right protagonists. I think I had missed out that. And, sustainable peace is not something you will get overnight. It is a process and it's a journey. But we tend, I think, to be, let me say, excited and happy when we start achieving some milestones. Some milestones make us so happy, and sometimes we relax. When the peace agreement has been signed, we tend also to be happy and relax. So we need to be consistent, and we need to sustain, and at every step, we reflect on what needs to be done, because what you did before signing the agreement will be different from what you will do after signing the agreement. But so I'm calling upon all of these actors to not to over-celebrate the short-term peace achievements, not to relax, because we have seen countries, communities relapse back to violent conflicts. So we need to continue. We need to re-strategize. I think at every point in time, we need to sit, reflect, and draw new strategies.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. It reminded me of...
We have celebrated the peace agreement, cessation of
That's right. No, that's true. No, thank you so much. It reminded me that people always question that do not celebrate, like you said, rightly said, that do not celebrate the signing of a peace agreement because the major work is in the implementation. And the implementation is always like, it's one step to relapsing back into conflict. And we've seen it with some countries where they did not even implement peace agreements until halfway and go back to conflict. So thank you so much. That's a very powerful statement. Thank you. Truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Chiziga. We are truly humbled to have to go through your journey today, to understand the amazing work that you're doing. We're truly proud of you. And yes, your legacy will definitely live on. Thank you.
Pasca, and thank you to the leadership of AACC, and I wish you well. I hope that at some point I can also receive back this story and also listen to myself and be motivated to continue working for peace.
Definitely, you will get all of it, and yes, we will definitely be in touch right after here. Thank you so much. There you have it, viewers. Elizabeth Chiziga, an amazing peace builder whose journey started way back from the 70s, and today we've had the amazing work that he's been doing in peace building in the Great Lakes region, in the Horn of Africa, and we're truly proud of the work that they're doing. But before you leave here, make sure that you subscribe to the AACC YouTube channel and stay connected and stay tuned to the upcoming episodes in the near future. Thank you so much and have a blessed day. Thank you.